Hi, and welcome to the Academy of Shem and Aver. I'm Rabbi David Katz, and this week is our 28th class. Okay, last week we finished the letter of the Rambam, and let's just go ahead and do our running review that we always do, and get caught up to date into where we're going to go this week. So as we all know, the first 15 approximately classes were the backbone to the Torah Shem. And then we were introduced to Jethro for, maybe a good 3 to 5 weeks. And in the middle of Jethro, we found Aravna, the Noahide. Then we went in from Aravna into Aver, as in Shem and Aver. Then we went into a slight little dip of digression with the Rambam letter and how we can ascertain the truth, know the truth, find the truth. And then last week, ultimately, we came out of everything. We finished up the Rambam. We came full circle with Shem. We talked about Shem and Aver together in light of Jethro, Aravna. We brought it basically into a nice focus. So now we're finding ourselves in yet another transition. The transition this time, in about 3 to 4 weeks from now, we are going to be in basically what's going to be phase 2 of the Academy of Shem and Aver, Torah Shem and Aver. We're going to be introducing the concept of the Shabbos for the Noahide, the Sabbath. The concept we want to bring down is there a precedent for any type of a Sabbath for the Noahide? And if there is a precedent, what would that precedent be? We know that we taught in the Torah of Shem, and through the light of Jethro brought to us, as we know, there's the 7 laws of Noah. That's obvious. Jethro then did 4 different novel acts. He brought a sacrifice to Hashem. He went into a ritual bath, the mikveh. Underwent circumcision. And he changed his name from Jether to Jethro. And when we look at the 7 laws of Noah compared to the 10 commandments, you can find that the 7 laws really can be included in the 10 laws. Right? Don't steal, don't steal. Don't murder, and so forth. You can make a comparison of the 7 negative traits of the 10 commandments. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You can correspond to the 7 laws of Noah. That leaves, I am Hashem your God, honor the Shabbos, and honor your parents. And from Jethro, we can see how the 3 positive commandments really relate to the 3 positive things that he did. Relate to your parents, relate to the elders. Jethro brought the offerings that connected the Noahides to their forefathers, and really the way Jacob honored his father, Jethro acknowledges the predecessors, Shem, Aver, and so forth. So there you see the honor your parents, the sacrifice. Then there's honor the Sabbath, which is the circumcision. And the ritual bath is I am Hashem your God. The Does the circumcision and the Sabbath really go hand in hand? From both are considered an os in Hebrew, a sign. I'm Hashem your God. That before the revelation of Sinai, there's the idea of going out from, let's say, a non-Torah reality to a Torah reality. So you see that in the 10 Commandments, there's room to say for the 7 laws of Noah, plus 3 positive, proactive ways to go. So in the weeks to come, in the next 3 weeks, I want to explore what the nature of what would be a Sabbath. And let's go ahead and use the Shabbos Ashkenazi pronunciation, Shabbos, for the Noahide. And to come to think, is there a precedent? Should a Noahide actually go into any nature of Shabbos at all? Is there any relevance? Is there any application? So we're going to do an intro today and lightly into these topics. And hopefully, with Torah Shem, over the next 3 weeks, I'll find sources that we can really look to Noah and Shem. Was there by them a precedent of Shabbos? We know that Noah's name has in it the concept of easing the toil of our labor. Noah literally can mean to rest. So to say B'nai Noah, the B'nai Noah, the offspring of Noah, is also to really say people that are of Noah. Therefore, it's to say those that are at rest. So is there a precedent to become even more at rest? If there's already a reality of being at ease, is there a precedent then on the Sabbath day to be more at ease? So we'll go into this framework of mind to really understand how this works. So let's go ahead and start with the introduction. And in 3 weeks from now, we're going to go into full force, bringing the Torah that we've brought down of Shem and Aver, and that's just a nickname for all that we've done with Jethro and with Aravna, all that we've done. We're going to bring that Torah into as a light. That Torah was light. We're going to bring it through the vessels for revelation, through the vessels of Shabbos. And just before we start, Noah's name, this is a good question. The question is, how did Noah's parents know to name him Noah? Very good question. So think back to last week. Remember we talked about Ruth? Ruth's name is prophetic, that from Ruth will come David. And David is going to be he who saturates Hashem with song and praise. So Ruth was that word for saturate comes from the language of Ruth. So from Ruth comes David. And the question is, how did Ruth get the name Ruth as a prophetic name of David? Because Ruth converted to Judaism, but her name Ruth never changed. She received the name Ruth as a non-Jewess. So the sources in Torah say that there's the concept that we've been working with for some time now. Think back. Shema Gerim, the name causes. This has been our axiom that we've gone by since the beginning. A name causes. So, for example, Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, means Yarom Ka. God will be lifted, says the Zohar. That when the temple was destroyed, God was lifted out of the temple. The divine presence left. In Isaiah, Yeshayahu means God will save. And that's what the prophecy of Yeshayahu is coming to say. So this is called Shema Gerim, the name causes. This is why in Torah all names are taken seriously as a form of study. It's not that the name causes upon you that you have no free will. It's that your soul expresses what it is, and there's a relationship between the person and God through the name. So even a non-Jew, Ruth, her name was given to her by divine inspiration. And even if you're inspired, let's say in like Isaiah and Jeremiah, or anybody that has a name, which effectively is everybody on the planet, their names are in fact inspired, and the name causes that even Ruth, her name shows that David will come from her. So Noah, when he was born, his soul was the Noah. He was the Noah program in the souls in heaven, under the throne of glory of God. So when his parents were going to come to name Noah, God made the circumstances in the world that his parents felt compelled that this was Noah. Just by whatever circumstances it was, Hashem made it so that the parents saw this one will ease the toil of our labor. Could be they were having a bad day, and they saw they had divine light and revelation. This one will ease the toil of our labor. Noah comes out, and he's named Noah. Noah now has the divine imprint on his soul, that his soul spoke to his soul connected to the world, to his parents. The name causes, and Noah was such a big, tremendous soul. And there's going to be a nations coming after him, B'nai Noah, Noahide, that are going to be archetypes of this Noahide, Noah soul. Thus, every Noahide has latent within him the concept of a name causes. Therefore, every name of the Noahide carries weight, carries significance, has meaning. Some will say that they have a name that will speak for all of time. Just like Noah's name was eternal. Just like Ruth's name was eternal. Even when Ruth converted to Judaism, not everybody converts to Judaism, she decided to convert, she kept her name. For example, when I became a Torah scholar, I was born David, and in Hebrew I became David. It's the same thing. But then there's another aspect of Noahide. Take the Noahide Jacob. Jacob effectively was a Noahide. He was a quasi-Jew, but he was also a quasi-Noahide. This is why the Ramban says that when Jacob offered an offering to Hashem, he offered what was called a shlomim, a more sanctified offering than a regular offering. And it was of questionable caliber. Should he offer something that's not before the Jewish nation and the temple? There's a reason why he did it, says the commentator, the Ramban. Jethro, when he makes his shlomim, his holy offering, he's connecting back to Jacob, and Jacob's connecting back the way he did. That's why we said that by Jethro, the offering he made was a connection to honoring one's parents or honoring one's predecessors. So Jacob had the name Jacob by birth, but in order to take on his spiritual mission, he had to become Israel. So he had a spiritual name, and he had his regular Torah name. So there's two schools of thought. There's like Ruth, who was born Ruth, remains Ruth, always was, is, will be Ruth. And then there's somebody in light of Jacob, who is Jacob and became Israel. And Jacob remained with both names. That's the interesting thing about Jacob. So when Abraham received the Hey to his name, the additional letter Hey became a negative commandment to not say the previous name of Abraham. But with Jacob, we make no such distinction. and that he is always referred to either as Jacob or his spiritual higher-ranking name, Israel. So that's why Noah was named Noah. His name was, again, under the concept Shem Agarim, the name causes. That Hashem brings out the light of your soul by instituting the reality necessary that the parents will name the child what his name really is. And there's also the other level that his name serves a function, and there's always the chance for an elevation of name. And again, going back to Jethro. Jethro was Jether. He also had a total of 8 names, but he changed his name in particular from Jether to Jethro. Only changed one letter. But that one letter, the letter Vav, ended up being the entire essence of the spiritual nature of Jethro when he was in conversion from the world of lies into the godly reality of the world. So on that note, I'll go into a concept that I wanted to bring down later. I'll bring it now. Is what is the concept of Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel? So in the Torah portion, Bahar, it says, Hashem spoke to Moses, say to the children of Israel, say to them. We have to ask ourselves, why the double language? Say to the children of Israel, say to them. So there's a double reiteration here. So it's Bnei Israel, let's just use the Hebrew, but the English translation, the children are offspring of Israel. Bnei Israel. The literal is the sons of Israel. That's Jacob, who became Israel. The 70 souls that came from him became 600,000 souls in Egypt. Fruitful and multiply. Brings us to the title Bnei Israel. But that's the pshat. That's the simple meaning in the text from the side of wisdom. But let's go on a different angle. Let's talk about Bnei Yisrael in the word Bnei as an allegorical term. So when the Torah portion Bahar, in the end of the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, when we're talking about Mount Sinai revelation, upon which every Noahide has a direct commandment to consider himself as having stood at Sinai. For a Noahide is only obligated in the 7 laws of Noah, or only gets credit for the 7 laws of Noah, if he takes on the 7 laws as was commanded to Moses on Mount Sinai. Thus, one who, by his own faculty, says, you know what? The whole world, if you look at it this way, can really boil down to 7 laws. That person is not fulfilling the 7 commandments. So for the Noahide, he must be routed and connected through Sinai, through the revelation that Moses got him, and to the same relationship that Jethro was not present at Mount Sinai. He left so as to be the Noahide of proper conduct to receive the Torah as it was commanded to Moses. Because from schism is the repair of schism, but to have repaired schism would have been an eternal schism. There would have been 2 nations, the Jethro nation, the Moses nation, and they would have never come together. Thus the world would have been in schism forever. So you have to say that Jethro's leaving Mount Sinai was an eternal inheritance of Sinai. It's like the opposite. From impurity comes purity. From the negative comes the positive. It's anti-logic. So the allegorical presence of the Noahide at Sinai, because the literal presence wasn't there. The Noahide is not the children of Jacob, and Jethro was not there. So the literal becomes shifted in the Noahide to the allegorical. The allegorical presence of Sinai was no longer the sons of Israel, but B'nai Yisrael, B'nai meaning of. For example, in Hebrew, I'm 34 years old, so you say he's a ben 34. He's a son of 34. But you don't say son. You say he's ben 34. He's of 34. 34 is 34. He's of 34. So B'nai means those that are of. In Israel, we remove it from the literal, and we take it to the allegorical, and to the feminine of understanding, people of a higher spiritual name. Israel is the higher spiritual name of Jacob. So B'nai Yisrael becomes those of a higher spiritual name. So at Sinai, the higher spiritual name, the sublime level of soul, was present at Sinai. Hashem said to Moses, speak to the children of Israel and say to them. There was the presence of the names were there. Now that we have the allegorical and the feminine understanding as opposed to the literal and the wisdom, this is called lefi pshuto and not pshat. This is not the simple meaning of the text. It's the peripheral, meaning lefi pshuto means according to its strictness, or according to that which is not obviously known. So the fact is, only the Jewish people were known to be at Sinai. But lefi pshuto takes you in the peripheral and says, what is the all-encompassing light that was present at Sinai? That's lefi pshuto. Lefi pshuto is the oral Torah, implicit from the written Torah, but that which is not obvious from the text. It's not obvious from the text that the Noahides were at Sinai, but Jethro was figuratively there, left intentionally. The Noahides are rooted through Sinai, through the acceptance of the 7 laws of Noah. You must say that in the peripheral, the Noahide is present at Sinai. So it goes from the pshat to lefi pshuto. Lefi pshuto means lefi according to. Pshuto, its strictness, which is the opposite of pshat, its simple meaning. Strictness means you strip all context and connotation, and you say, were the Noahides at Sinai? Yes. Is it literally in the verse? No. But is it hinted at? Yes. The double language, say to them. Then you have the allegorical B'nai Israel, the emanation of the spiritual concept. Those that carry the concept of being of a spiritual name. Well, that's fine and dandy, but where does that come from? B'nai Noah. Because really the B'nai Yisrael we're talking about here are the B'nai Noach. We're trying to include the Noahide in Sinai. So the B'nai Yisrael that we're talking about, the allegorical, those of a higher spiritual name, are none other than the B'nai Noah. Now, remove B'nai Noah from the literal, and it becomes those of Noah. Literally, now we have the pshat, the simple meaning. And the allegorical is those that are of Noah, of a spiritual name of Noah, of a higher spiritual name like Noah, whose name causes, those who have a name that causes to be the eternal offspring of Noah. Thus you have, why was Noah named Noah? It was divine inspiration that would lead forever. And that there would be a spiritual people coming from Noah who would live by their names. The chiddush, or the innovation, the novelty is that the Noahide has the opportunity to extract, if he so chooses, to be like Jacob as opposed to Ruth. Ruth realized that her name was fine the way it was. It spoke of the absolute essence. Then there's a Noahide like Jacob. Jacob was a Jew. Let's not forget that. But he had a quasi-status as a quasi-Jew, quasi-Noahide, as he was before the giving of the Torah. Such was Abraham, such was Isaac, such was Jacob. That's why the Ramban questions the nature of the offering of Jacob. This is why Jacob was allowed to marry two sisters, as it was before the giving of the Torah. Thus, Jacob had the quasi-status, and Noahide can as well have the quasi-status. To be a Noahide of Sinai is to be of Shem. Strictly, Moses received the Torah. I believe in the Torah. I am a Noahide. But there's Shem and Aver, and Aver represents the Hebrew. So to incorporate the Hebrew or the Aver aspect to Shem is to say maybe there's like Jacob who had the name Israel. And I would say that Ruth was really, she was focusing on Shem with the total inclusion of Aver from birth. That her name Ruth encapsulated the Hebrew nuances of Aver. Aver comes from the language Ivri, which is Hebrew. So it depends on the name that you're given at birth, the name that causes. It could be your name is David already. It could be your name is John, which is Yonatan or Yochanan. The name causes. What Hashem gave you, your name, dictates the path you take. Either there's no name change, your name goes all the way into the Hebrew already, or you may feel that the status of B'nai Noah in light of B'nai Yisrael requires a higher spiritual name. And this is how one becomes in touch with their soul. And they're all correct. All scenarios of a name causes is correct. And the conversion we're talking about is not conversion to Judaism, but a conversion of reality, of being pulled from the world of falsehood into the world of truth. And the name is what helps do that. But it could be your name is rooted firmly in the world of truth, such as Ruth. Could be that it's not, such as Jacob. Could be their name is like Noah, spanning both. Depends on you. Depends on how the soul reacts to the name. So that's the gift of the Noahide. The gift of the Noahide is the gift of his name. That's why Noah's firstborn son, who received the Torah, is Shem. Shem literally means name. And Shem and Aver literally means Hebrew name. That ultimately there is a Hebrew imprint of one's soul. So now that we spoke about Mount Sinai and B'nai Yisrael and B'nai Noah, how does one really become connected in this bubble? And there's another term that when the Jews were in slavery in Egypt, they were called Ha'ivrim. Which the Targum, the translation in Aramaic to the Hebrew is Yehuda'e, those of Judah, Jews, Yehuda'e. But the translation in Aramaic is not referring to Jews because that was before the Jews were called Jews. Jews were not called Jews until after Purim, many years later. So Yehuda'e, the plural of Judahs, literally means those that acknowledge God. So Ivrim, to be of the Hebrews, are those who acknowledge God. Now it's interesting to note, what were these Ivrim, the Hebrews? Make up your mind. Are they B'nai Yisrael? Are they Hebrews? Jews? Who are they? So B'nai Yisrael, in the literal meaning, we say the literal meaning never loses its literal meaning. Meaning, even though allegorically we relate Noahides to be joined to B'nai Yisrael, the Jews never stopped being B'nai Yisrael. So we never lose the pshat. We never lose the simple meaning. Therefore, the Bnei Noah, they never lose their meaning either. They remain eternally the Noahide. And the Jews remain eternally the Bnei Yisrael. Now, Bnei Yisrael can be Bnei Noah, those of a spiritual name. And Bnei Noah can be joined to Bnei Yisrael, those of a spiritual name. The two camps intermix, but they never lose their identity. So what happened is people think that Judaism started with Abraham as a locked entity. Nothing came before Abraham, and nobody can enter after. As it's true, nobody can enter after except through the hands of converting. I use the word converting or converted as opposed to conversion. Conversion is a constant, eternal shift from something not true to true, like Jethro went through. Converting or converted means I'm done. Destination, destiny. But the fact is Abraham came from Aver, Avraham Ivri, Abraham the Hebrew. And the Jews were called the Hebrews. So to get really into the Bnei Yisrael, to be into the Torah as it was on Sinai, the Noahide comes from Aver as well. Abraham was just really an offspring of Aver, who had a son, who had a son, who had sons, and they became a closed family offshoot of Aver. Thus, Aver is the Hebrews, Ivrim. What's interesting is that the Noahide, without converting to Judaism, can effectively be part of the Ivrim. He can be an authentic Hebrew without feeling any kind of need or whatever to be Jewish. There's no need for everyone to convert to Judaism. Noahide exists, that's what we're saying. B'nai Noah go back to the gift of Noah and his name. But the concept can be aroused to be of the Hebrews. Now again, is that an obligation? No. One can remain with Shem and Noah. But to be of the higher spiritual name, one can join with his name by being of the Hebrew, which is the union of Aver with Shem. Going back to Noah. Again, the Hebrew name Shem Aver is what Noah was all about. You can even say Noah really was the original Hebrew. Because Aver was Aver, Hebrew. And Shem in the Torah, it says he was the father of all the Hebrews. But the father of the father was Noah. Thus, every Noahide has the opportunity, if he so chooses, to be linked with Ivrim, to be of the Hebrews. That's what happens when he goes into the inner dimension of Noah. Noah is the beginning, and then letters Chachmas Nister, the wisdom of the hidden. That's when Noah becomes Chen, grace. Now, there's no obligation. The Vilna Gaon says he who studies the Kabbalah, it's the merit to learn Kabbalah. It's the merit to learn God's ways. It's enough to go through Sinai as an offspring of Shem, to learn the Torah as was commanded to Moses. But to really get in the commandment of Moses, the Torah as it was commanded, how does one do that? How does one strengthen the bond in the Noahide commandment through Moses as Jethro left and came back? It's the Aver aspect, the Hebrew, the inner dimension. To be joined with Bnei Yisrael at Sinai is through the Ivrim, the Hebrews. So you see, there's a triad: Bnei Yisrael, Bnei Noah, and the Ivrim. Bnei Yisrael literally are the Jews. Bnei Noah are the Noahides. but the Noahide can have a portion of Bnei Yisrael through his union with Ivrim. Thus at Mount Sinai, say to the children of Israel, say to them, as the Jews were also called Ivrim. But it's not exclusive rights. By doing as such, the Noahide realizes Shema Gerim, the name causes. And as we said, there's many levels of understanding that. There's like Ruth, Jethro, Jacob, or Noah. All the different options of how one relates to his name. But ultimately, the Hebrew element of his soul will prevail. Ultimately. Just as the Jewish people at the time, they were formed to be Bnei Yisrael, to accept the Torah, they became Mamlechas Kohanim, a nation of priests. The Noahide who learns Torah becomes on the level of the high priest as well. Which Aravna, the Noahide, he was actually the governor of the Temple Mount in the spot of the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest can go. That comes into focus when the Torah is accepted through the command of Moses, and the more one gets into the Hebrew, even one letter at a time, even one letter, one name, one word, he all the more so strengthens his priestly status. That's the introduction for today. So now let's go into the material. Every day, people have 14 tests. 7 laws of Noah are confronting you every day. Jew, Noahide, every person that walks the face of the earth. You will have 7 tests to pass the Noahide laws, the governing rights of righteousness. Most likely you'll fail. This comes from the Kabbalistic work, the Bahir. Then you will have 7 other tests come after you, of which you are expected to pass. When one passes the 7 tests, he gains righteousness for that day. Thus, every day we're confronted with the emanation of the commandments from God. Every day. Think about when you go through your life every day, how there's always the inclination to steal, to kill. How you say, well, I'm not a killer, so how am I tested with killing? Embarrassing a person to the point he goes white in the face is killing. How many times do we embarrass people when we're not even aware of what we're doing? Lust, blasphemy, all the things we do, even by the passing inner monologue that we're not even aware of. To be aware of one's being is what the ultimate test is. To be absolutely righteous. So every day the commandments come in the form of reality. There's an interesting play on words. That the very word in Hebrew for reality, mitzius, Ashkenazi, or for the Sephardi pronunciation, mitziut, mem tzadik yud aleph vav taf, mitziut, mitzius, reality. What is reality? Reality has many looks. But if you break the word of reality into 2 Hebrew words, it spells mitzvot. If there are commandments. I mean, if you're not aware of commandments, you're not aware of reality. That's what the commandments are coming to do, the pathways of righteousness. You can't judge reality unless you're taking on commandments. God put light in the vessels of commandments. And by mastering the commandment, you become a master of light. And the world, according to Kabbalah, even science, is just light. So we have to focus and see and understand, what light are you seeing? What are you seeing in the world? To be able to contemplate what one sees. So if there are commandments, that means there is reality. You see reality. When it used to be funny to laugh at somebody, now it becomes a point of compassion. When it used to be, cliche to curse God, now it becomes the opposite. It becomes an opportunity to sanctify God. If there are commandments, there is reality. Reality is, it's not just to kill somebody, even in terms of, let's say, slander. So the 7 tests become an opportunity for 7 success attempts every day. Noahide, Jew alike. Thus, what you find is that there's the concept of the divine providence coming into the world. God interacts with you, with me, with him, with her, every day, with the creation of the personification of God's wisdom. And what is God's wisdom? It's God's light forming an idea that we can draw from and harness it in the world. Bread. Bread is God's light in the world. But the light comes down in the form of wisdom and the wheat and the making of the wheat and the sifting and the pounding and the threshing, baking. A whole process becomes evolved around making bread. That's wisdom. That's a large span of light, spanning from the beginning of the process to the end. And the vessel which contains the light is the bread itself. So when somebody said, I'm going to make bread. What's bread, he asks. That person that first, it was Adam, but whatever. When you first conceived bread, you said, all of a sudden you had a whole spectrum of time. And you saw that if I take wheat and I pound it and I separate it and I sift it out and I bake it, it could be edible. And then he goes through the actions and does it, and in the end it's bread. Isn't this how every novelty comes to the world? The engine of the car, what do you call it? The combustible engine. Every great wisdom is the perception of light. The perception of light is somebody saw the emanation come to the world. So the laws come in every day, the emanation into the world. But then there's also the 613 laws, which effectively are part of Torah. The most basic premise of 613 laws is they're part of Torah. For example, the circumcision. Circumcision is part of Torah. When a Jew reads circumcision in the Torah, he understands that on the 8th day of a baby's life, he must circumcise the flesh of the child. What relation does the Noahide have to circumcision? If a Noahide's never been around the Jewish people, he has no conception of what a circumcision is. So the Jew learns the Torah circumcision according to the literal and according to the wisdom. So does that mean the Noahide has no portion of Torah when it comes to circumcision? If, let's say, he has the opportunity to visit, to do a circumcision, he can perceive it. But must the Noahide cross over to the Jewish camp in order to find out what the Jew does? Should it rely on the Jew at all? What if, just like Bnei Israel, those of the higher spiritual name, what if we take the Torah allegorically? Now, does it lose its literal meaning? No. Just like Bnei Israel. The children of Israel never lost their true literal meaning. But is the allegorical false? The answer is no, it is not. There are 4 levels of exegesis in the Torah. Pshat, simple meaning. Remez, hint. Drush, extrapolation, allegory. Sod, secret. All 4 are completely valid. Just so happens that the performance of the commandments, 613, come under the constitution of literal. We literally circumcise the flesh. But from the Torah angle, from the non-literal, from the non-commandment side, but from the light and vessel of the Torah, from the reality of it, the allegorical has weight. Just like we said, B'nai Israel literally means the children of Israel, but can double as those of the higher spiritual name. Is it wrong to say that the Noahide is of the spiritual name? The answer is no, it is not wrong. Is it the only answer? No. Is it the literal answer? No. But is it wrong? Is the allegorical valid? Absolutely. All 4 levels, which are called pardes, the orchard, take the initial letters of the 4 levels, they're all equally valid. Thus we have then coming into the concept, the hand of God. There's anthropomorphisms in the Torah. The hand of God. I saw the hand of God come into my life, somebody will say. You didn't see 5 fingers, a physical hand come into creation. But there's a way of perceiving events, perception of light, into the physical realm, and you say, that was none other than the hand of God. So is that literal? No. Is it the wisdom? No. Is it the allegorical? Yes. And it's from the feminine side, the understanding side, Bina? Yes. So if we can perceive divine intervention, the help of heaven, the so-called hand of God, replace the word hand and replace it with mitzvah or commandment, the commandment of God. And reality is composed of the Hebrew word, if there are commandments, mitziyut mitzvot. If there are commandments, there is reality. Just like the ultimate test of righteousness is on 7 laws, reality is composed of at least the allegorical fulfillment of reality expressing the light of the commandments 613. Hashem created the universe. He looked into the Torah as the blueprint. Now, there are the actual literal fulfillment of the commandments. If you are confronted with thou shalt not kill, you do not kill. You don't say, well, just don't embarrass the guy. There is the literal. We don't lose the pshat. Remember that rule. We never lose the simple meaning. Thus, all commandments, 7 and 613, never lose their surface value of performance, even as part of reality. But as we all know, there's in physics, there's the revealed matter, and there's quantum physics. So what is the quantum here? The quantum is we see reality, and we see the revealed reality of the laws when it's revealed. But sometimes there's an underneath part of reality, the hidden side of reality. There's the revealed and concealed part of Torah in everything. Thus, the more Torah knowledge one has of the Hebrew is what unlocks the door to reality, understanding the commandments as a Hebrew nuance. One can perceive the allegorical truth of reality. That's what Shem's Torah and Aver's Torah represents. Shem's Torah is to look at reality on the surface and see how there's at least the 7 laws of Noah. One can perceive 613 commandments to the Jews, but that's one, again, in physics, they say the revealed world is a fraction of the nature of the quantum universe. Underneath the surface, there's an entire world But what Shem saw is that the entire world had a partsuf, a personification, of which great spiritual truths can be seen in reality. The concept of making bread is an example. Shem saw the Torah emanating before him. Big concepts in Torah emanating. The Torah went on that level from the microcosm, the small little factors, blown up to the macrocosm. Take the example of bris milah, the circumcision. Bris meaning covenant, milah meaning to cut, circumcise. The literal fulfillment of that is the 8th day of a boy's life. He circumcises his flesh. That action is a spiritual moment when the drawing of blood and the presence of wine, the nephesh, the lowest level of the person's soul, is open to receive an influence of his name. That's why the name is revealed at the time of the circumcision. Thus, that ceremony is where the spiritual and the physical realms unite, and the literal blood becomes invested with the nature of the godly soul. As it's brought down in the books, that's what the nature of this world is. The animalistic body infused with the godly soul, and the wrestling match is to make the body into a righteous servant to the godly soul. So the name is that part. That unites the godly soul into the animation of the body. And the circumcision is the ritual that does that. That's the allegorical side to the literal side of the circumcision. Now, Noah was born circumcised. Shem was born circumcised. There's no actual commandment of circumcision by the Noahide. Jethro underwent it because he felt that he connected to that commandment on the level of he was commanded and does is greater than he who was not commanded and does. For him, that was he felt that was incumbent upon him. But we can achieve this through another means. The gematria or numerical value of Shem and Aver is the gematria numerical value bris, covenant. In Milah, to cut, literally means word. Thus, the covenant of the word, Shem, Aver, bris, Milah, word, and again, Shem and Aver means Hebrew name. The Hebrew name is the covenant of the word. Thus, what you have is when a Noahide connects to the concept called Shema Gerim, either by realizing that her name is Ruth, is, was, always will be. She has done the bris milah in the allegorical sense. She has emanated the light of the concept. She's saying, my being is Ruth. Or Noah. He was Noah. He did the circumcision, bris milah. He is saying allegorically, I have a Hebrew name, which is the covenant of a word. I am Noah. And by being Noah and realizing his destiny is Noah, he is emanating the Noah principle to the world, which still is going today. Thus, the lack of the literal necessity, because he was born without the need, allegorically, he is projecting and expressing his belief in Torah. And the allegorical, just like we said, Bnei Israel, and the Ivrim, personified by Bnei Noach. And what that does is it's a conversion. It's a constant conversion. It's taking the animation of the body, just as we said, the rectification of the lowest level of soul, where the godly soul meets the body, for Noahide and Jew alike. And the emanation of one's name is the prevailing of the godly soul, the named aspect of the soul over the body. This is what's called the honor of God. That by just being who we are, by being the Noahide you are, whether it is the higher name, the name you have, the name permeating all levels, whatever the name you identify. And there's all different levels. There's, again, Jacob, Israel, Ruth, Noah, Jethro, all the precedents we have. Aravna, whose name means the yearning of light. By taking on the righteousness of the name. Noah was righteous by name. Ruth was righteous by name. Jacob chose a name of a higher level of righteousness. But Noah was depicted of righteousness by his name. One of two people in the Torah to be called righteous. That is the emanation of the commandment. He is emanating the commandment. He is a walking, breathing expression, animation of the commandment in the allegorical. And it brings on the interest of the light into the vessel of he who was commanded and does is greater than he who does. It's the Aver aspect to Shem. It's the Hebrew element to Shem. It's the strengthening of Sinai of the Torah in the original. Is one obligated to go that way? No. By being the offspring of Noah and accepting the Torah as was given to Moses at Sinai is enough. But again, the name shows that. For Ruth, it was enough. For Jacob, it wasn't. For Jethro, it wasn't. And for the woman is when everything comes down to soulmates. So when the man receives his circumcision in the flesh, in the literal, the woman, she doesn't have the need for bris milah or circumcision. So it's almost like the one action constitutes enough for both. That by his, repair of soul, of body and soul, he becomes a fit vessel for her. She becomes conformed to him. He's called the Or Panimi. She's called the Or Makif. He has the inner light, Or Panimi. She's the Or Makif, the surrounding light. So she is molded after what he becomes. Cause and effect. She also can undergo when she becomes her name. She also, I would even go as far as to say, she becomes the allegorical. A woman has more rights of the allegorical than the man. The man in Torah Judaism, he has to undergo the knife. So a woman, she can connect to the allegorical by being who she is. The Noahide also is like is in the feminine concept of bina or understanding. Yet the Noahide man, like Jethro, can bring it to the point of the knife, if he so chooses. To the point that there's a quasi eighth commandment to Noahide, which is circumcision. The offspring of Keturah, the mother of Ishmael, they practice circumcision. Thus, there is a precedent, even in the Noahides, as a quasi-proactive eighth measure to circumcise. Thus, what you find is the relationship of circumcision, male-female, even in Noahide. So now we have the concept of an emanation of the commandments. There's the literal and the allegorical, the wisdom and the understanding, the masculine and the feminine. That of the oral Torah, that of the written Torah. And again, it's obvious, the circumcision of the flesh is an oral Torah property, which is to the Jewish observance. And the written Torah, as it was given over from Shem, from Noah to the Noahide, is the written Torah, which, mind you, is devoid of context and connotation. One cannot expect the Noahide to understand the Jewish side without context and connotation, and vice versa. The Jew can't stop doing the commandments to be on the portion of lacking of connotation and context of the text. He must stick to the text. The text never loses its simple meaning. So each side has their own take of Torah. For the Noahide, the commandments are light and Torah. Each side has its own side, and each can receive and reveal from the other. The Jew needs to learn the allegorical side of the Torah. But without the revealed side, the Noahide side loses its integrity. The literal must remain literal, and the allegorical must be remaining allegorical. Both need each other. Both observe the way they observe. And what you find is the expression of beliefs is that you can't hold one to context and connotation as a right of understanding the Torah if that's not where he comes from. What that does is it allows the Torah to be innovated from the Bnei Noah, who have the gift of the priesthood and learning Torah and their innate ability to innovate. And the Torah's innovations over time can be directly attributed to the innovations of the Noahide. And that's why at Sinai, there's the Noahide and the Jew both present. That's why there's a precedent for the Noahide to be of Aver with Shem, for the Torah seeks innovation. And he who is on the level of the high priest is an innovator of Torah. And the innovation one has to give over comes from his name that the name causes. By being in connection with his name, he is innovating the Torah either directly, face-to-face, or back-to-back in a hidden way, hidden and revealed elements of Torah. That's the basic concept. Next week we're going to get into how does Shabbos come into light of this? How does one have the extra soul that comes down on Shabbos? How is that a portion of the extra soul with the extra dimension within the name? With what does the Noahide do on Shabbos? Where's the precedent in Torah? Because on Shabbos it says a second soul comes down. Is that the higher name? Is there a precedent? That's all for this week. Next week we'll get into more of the introduction to the Noahide and Shabbos. That's all for now. Have a great week. See you next time.